You'll spend about 80,000 hours of your life working. Think about that. It's a huge amount of time. So the question of how to find a career that's not just something you enjoy, but one that actually makes a real difference in the world, well, that might be one of the most important questions you'll ever ask yourself. And today, we're going to break down how to answer it.
Now, I'm sure you've heard this a million times. It's the most common piece of career advice out there. Follow your passion. And it sounds great, doesn't it? The idea that you just find that one thing you absolutely love to do, and bam, you've got a great career. But what if I told you that after looking at over 60 studies on career satisfaction, the evidence says this is probably not the best advice?
In fact, what if a lot of what we think we know about finding a dream job is just wrong? Today, we're going to bust some of the biggest myths out there and give you a whole new framework for thinking about your career, all based on decades of solid research.
All right, let's dive right in. First things first, we have to completely rethink what a dream job even is. We're so often told it's all about getting a huge paycheck and having a low-stress life. But it turns out, the science points us in a totally different direction.
This is incredible research from two Nobel laureates, Kahneman and Deaton. They found something fascinating. While having more money might make you feel better about your life story, what they call life satisfaction, it doesn't really do much for your actual day-to-day happiness. How you feel hour by hour just kind of flatlines.
And that plateau, it happens at a household income of about $75,000 a year. Seriously, beyond that point, more money has almost no effect on how happy or sad or stressed you feel in your daily life. And for a lot of college graduates, that's a very reachable income, which means chasing a massive salary for the sake of happiness is probably a waste of your energy.
Okay, so what about aiming for that chill, low-stress job? Well, research shows that's also misguided. They studied high-ranking leaders, people with huge demands on them, and found they actually have lower levels of stress hormones. Why? It's all about having a sense of control. So the sweet spot isn't zero stress, because let's be honest, that's just boring. It's having a fulfilling challenge, where the demands of the job are a great match for your abilities.
But here's the bigger problem. We're just terrible at predicting what's actually going to make us happy in a job. As Harvard professor Dan Gilbert points out, our gut feelings are surprisingly unreliable. You know how you can remember an entire vacation as being terrible just because you missed the flight home? It's like that. So just sitting around trying to figure out what you think you want, it's not enough. We need a better guide.
So if our intuition is a bad guide, what's a good one? Well, decades of research point to these 6 things. They're the real ingredients of a dream job. It's about having work that's so engaging you can get lost in it. Work that helps other people. Actually being good at what you do. Having colleagues who support you. Making sure there are no huge deal breakers, like a soul-crushing commute. And of course, having it all fit with the rest of your life. Now, notice what is not on that list: a specific passion or a job title. The real takeaway here is this. If you can get these conditions right, you won't just find your passion, you'll build it.
Okay, so now we've got a new picture of what a fulfilling job looks like for us. But what about our impact on others? How can one person really truly make a difference in the world? The answer is probably not what you think.
Let's just take a classic do-gooder job, being a doctor. Research shows that a doctor in a developed country, like the UK, saves, on average, about 4 lives over their entire career. Now that's important, for sure, but it's probably less than you imagined. That's because of something called diminishing returns. There are already a lot of doctors. Now compare that to Dr. David Nalen. His work on a super simple salt and sugar water solution to treat dehydration from diseases like cholera, well, that saved an estimated 50 million lives. So here's the crucial point. It's all about leverage. Even if you argue that Dr. Nalen's work only sped up the discovery of this therapy by 6 months, his impact would still be over 100,000 times greater than an ordinary doctor's. This isn't about him being a better person. It's about him finding an opportunity with way more leverage. And this brings us to one of the most important ideas in this entire explainer. When you look at the impact of different actions, you see this pattern, what's called a fat-tailed distribution. What it means is that a tiny number of actions are thousands of times more effective than all the average ones.
So the choice of what problem you work on is one of the most important decisions you will ever make.
And here's a really powerful way to get into that high-impact zone that's open to pretty much anyone. It's a concept called earning to give. The idea is really simple. You take a higher-paying job that you're good at, and you donate a meaningful chunk of your income, say 10%, to the most effective charities in the world. A typical college grad who does this can literally save hundreds of lives over their career.
Okay, so if some problems are just way more impactful to solve than others, how in the world do we find them? Well, it turns out there's a pretty simple three-part framework you can use to zero in on the world's most pressing problems. The very first question you have to ask is about scale. Just how big is the problem? And our brains are shockingly bad at this. For instance, studies show that people will pay about the same amount of money to save 2,000 birds as they will to save 200,000 birds. It's a weird mental glitch called scope neglect. It just means we have to look at the actual numbers, not just what feels important in our...
Next up, you need to ask, how neglected is this problem? Think about it. If a field is already jam-packed with people and money, it's going to be a lot harder for one more person to make a big difference. The real opportunities, the low-hanging fruit for making an impact, are often in the areas that pretty much everyone else is overlooking.
And finally, is the problem actually solvable? This one is so critical because a shocking number of attempts to do good, well, they just don't work. Rigorous studies show that over 75% of social programs have little to no positive effect, and some of them even make things worse. So we have to focus our energy where we know we can actually make progress.
Let's put this framework into action. Compare trying to tackle poverty in the US versus in the developing world. The scale of the problem is just vastly larger globally. It's way more neglected when you look at the resources spent per person, and we have more proven super cost-effective ways to help, like distributing anti-malarial bed nets. So when you run it through the framework, it becomes clear you can have a much, much bigger impact focusing on global poverty.
Okay, so let's bring all this home. With these new ideas and tools, how do you actually go about building a smarter career plan for yourself, starting right now?
The most important thing to do early in your career is to focus on building what we call career capital. Think of it like investing. These are your assets, the skills you learn, the people you know, your reputation, that will open up bigger and better opportunities for you later on. The earlier you invest in yourself, the more time that investment has to grow, and the bigger your long-term impact will be.
So how do you find your fit? It really just boils down to two steps. First, you have to reframe the question. Stop asking, what am I good at? And start asking, what could I become good at? And second, go investigate. Get out of your own head. Don't just sit there and reflect. Go run some cheap experiments. Talk to people in fields that seem interesting. Try a little side project. The only way to really know if something fits is to actually try it.
So I'll leave you with this. What if the secret to a career that's deeply satisfying and hugely impactful isn't about looking inward to find some pre-existing passion? What if the real answer is to look outward, to look at the world's biggest problems and ask, where can I best contribute? If you do that, you won't just find a passion, you'll build one.